The gold in the hills has not gotten depleted. It's gotten richer and bigger and stronger, and the nuggets are better, but they're also harder to mine. If you want to have market share, if you want to even have a place to go with your leads, you've got to be looking at getting lawyers. If you're not lawyered up, you're in harm's way. Simple as that.
Mr. Troutman, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely, baby. Pleasure to be here.
Mr. Troutman, Eric Troutman is the man when it comes to everything TCPA and more. So I wanted you on today for this podcast to specifically ask you to talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old affiliate publisher.
Okay. So like you're a 5-year-old child, or you've been an affiliates publisher for 5 years? So you have to be very precise when it comes to the law and lawyers.
I've got a couple years as an affiliate or a publisher, either with my own off-own sites, or I'm just sending link out traffic. What are the main things I need to focus on as we go into the one-to-one consent changes coming up?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me on. Always a fan. We've got to understand that this is the biggest change that's hit the lead generation industry really since it started 15 years ago, right? There's nothing like this before. It's the first time the regulators have actually lifted up the rock, seen what's going on under there and said, all right, we're going to make some changes. Everybody in the ecosystem is impacted by this. Everybody has to pay attention. Today, as we know, we can have a very broad form. We can have a hyperlink. We can have thousands of marketing partners. We can sell some data into a network. The network can sell it to another network. You can go to an aggregator. The aggregator can sell it to whoever. It might get sold 100 times over a period of months or even years, and nobody's keeping track of any of that, right? That's all gone. Yeah. I mean, if you just stop and think about that's the way it worked, it's surprising that it didn't go away sooner, right? I mean, this was obviously non-sustainable. The regulators are taking a look down and say, no. From now on, the consumer has to agree on a one-to-one basis with exactly who it is, what brand, what entity they are going to consent to receive calls from or on behalf of. That's it. It's that simple. So if you're a publisher, you're an affiliate, you're trying to generate leads that'll percolate up to a brand, you've got to have a complete line of sight between your website and who's going to be buying that product. That means you've got to be able to qualify that consumer for whatever it is that brand is going to require. And by the way, you're going to have either a relationship directly with that buyer, or you're going to have a good network affiliate who's going to be able to push you straight through to the brand that's actually buying that lead for that specifically qualified consumer, because otherwise what you're generating is going to have no value at all.
Or if there is
from my perspective, where I'm sitting, no value at all. But I can understand that there will be some people that'll still be willing to buy that lead for various purposes. I don't disagree with that.
What is the risk someone is taking by not following where things are going?
So the ultimate risk is on the outbound caller, right? So if it is the marketer, they're at risk. If it is the lead buyer that's making a call, they're at risk. If they're a brand who's going to receive a warm transfer from a lead buyer who made the outbound call, they're at risk, right? So anybody kind of in that chain is going to be at risk. The risk is $500 per call. $500 per call.
Text message or phone call? Or
that also includes text messages, and that includes attempted calls that didn't even go through, right? So you think about how many attempted calls are going to be made. If $500, I can basically guarantee you're not making $500 on every attempted call. I know you're not, okay? So the risk here is by definition and by design going to outweigh the potential benefit. Always. That's how this is set up. So you have to make sure you're doing it right. Otherwise, you will end up wiped out. $500 per call. Class actions are allowed. It's not like you just have to deal with one guy, right? It's every single call you've made can be aggregated into a single lawsuit. So you're talking about hundreds of millions, tens of millions, going to wipe you out no matter who you are.
So if you were an affiliate right now and you had your own flows and you're hosting leads to multiple networks exclusively, how would you best navigate this? Just give me bullet points.
I would go and get myself the best lawyer I could afford. In all seriousness. Right now, I mean, I know it's weird to say, right? Because especially in this industry where folks have been so innovative, have been able to just really innovate themselves out of anything and be able to be nimble and adapt and survive and stay. I don't mean this in a bad way, but from a certain perspective, stay in the shadows, right? Stay behind the scenes. The idea of that now, like your whole business model turns on lawyers, I get it, man. That's unattractive.
Yeah.
That's just like cuts against the core of who people want to be, which is why, I try to be a cool lawyer, right? Because nobody wants to go and talk to like a lawyer. That's terrible. But the truth is, if you're going to be in this space now, you have to, right? If you want to be successful in the market, you have to be able to have a compliance play. You can't go to a brand or even to a network now and say, hey, I've got leads, unless you can back those leads up and be able to say, hey, look, I work with qualified attorneys. I'm doing this the right way. Here's my flow. It's going to be vetted. So if you want to have longevity, if you want to have market share, if you want to even have a place to go with your leads, you've got to be looking at getting lawyers. Now, I say the best lawyer you can afford, because I know not everyone can afford Troutman and me. Like, I know that. And that's why we come out free of charge at no cost to anybody, fly out here, sponsor stages, and share tons of content every chance I get. Even when I just got back from Europe and I'm really tired, I do it, right? Because I want to be able to help people, even those that can't afford me. Obviously, look, if you want to, retain us, please do. We'd love that. But we understand that, my rate's $4,300 an hour. Not everyone can afford that. In fact, very few companies can, and that sucks. But my advice is get yourself a good lawyer, whoever it is that you can afford, but make sure that they do this stuff, right? Not just a general lawyer who's going to try to look into it, because they will get you killed. Get yourself qualified attorneys who really know what they're talking about. And I know it sucks. I know it hits you in the gut. Like, I don't want to do that. I'd rather go get a root canal than talk to a lawyer. Like, I get it, man. But just like you don't want your teeth to fall out, so you go to the dentist, you don't want your business to fail. So you got to go talk to a lawyer, man. It's as simple as that. Or go do something else, right? Like, if you really are that allergic to lawyers, this is not the industry for you anymore. And it's crazy to say that, right? Because this place, 15 years, we didn't need attorneys really to get by. Now, if you're not lawyered up, you're in harm's way. Simple as that.
Can I selfishly ask you a few questions?
Sure, man.
That probably a lot of publishers or affiliates are going to have as well.
That's why we're here.
Cool. So let's say I've got my own legal brands.
Okay.
I capture it. My language consents for my company. What can I do with that data? What can I do with that lead if I'm not the attorney and I'm selling retainers or monetizing with retainers on through intake centers?
Well, so if your name is on the lead form, then you can't sell that lead as express written consent. Now, you might be able to utilize it as some kind of a trigger, right? Maybe that data set is valuable to somebody for whatever reason. And, depending on what the other disclosures are on the web form, you might have a privacy policy that allows you to share that information. Now, understand, data sharing and TCPA, they're closely aligned, but they're two different things, right? Data sharing requirements are at the state level, and they're going to vary. TCPA requirements are at the federal level, although there are also state corollaries, but the TCPA is at the federal level, and it only applies to calling. So if you're going to share data, that's going to be under the state rules. If you're going to be making calls, that's going to be under the federal TCPA. So if you've got a consent form that has your name on it as the lead generator, but not as the ultimate, law firm, let's say in the legal vertical, then you can't sell that as a viable lead that the law firm can call, but you might be able to sell it as a trigger that the law firm can keep in mind, assuming that ethical rules permit them to make an outbound call, may or may not. I'm not here to opine on that, right? But that's going to depend on whether or not data sharing is permitted, right? Probably stepping outside of the legal vertical, which is a little bit trickier because there's extra rules that apply there. In your standard mortgage vertical, right, somebody goes onto your website, says, I want to hear from, let's just pick on Lending Tree, right? The fact that they're now in the mortgage, they're interested in a mortgage, maybe a 30-year fix, maybe a refi, the fact that that consumer has entered that market has value, right? The knowledge that that consumer is in the market has value. You might be able to sell that trigger as an intent lead to, I don't know, another lender. That lender might have their own level of consent. They might be an existing customer of that lender.
Like
that lender might be able to take that data set, monetize it, and make an outbound call legally using an EBR or manually. But what you couldn't do would be sell that lead and have them make calls using regulated technology. So there's going to be some ways that you can that you can monetize even non-compliant one-to-one leads post January 27, 2025, but it's going to be very limited.
So let's say I have that legal brand and I capture it, my consent, everything's buttoned up. Can I message that person to then go to another site to re-opt in for something else relevant or non-relevant?
Probably not. The scope of the consent is going to dictate what you can articulate to the consumer, what we can share with the consumer. The scope of intent is going to look at the scope of the website, right? So if your website says something like, hey, enroll in our newsletter service and we'll send you multiple messages of offers you might be interested in and we'll save you money, Yeah, right. If you set it up that way and you get consent to that, then yes, then you could then continue to reach out to that consumer, consistent with the transparent disclosure the consumer agreed to. But if it's just a, hey, are you interested in solar? Sign up here. They sign up. You send them a message saying, great, now you got solar. Hey, are you interested in insurance or are you interested in a mortgage? The answer to that is no. It's going to exceed the scope of the original consent and the intention of the consumer.
So the answer is, if you choose to build a brand in that sense,
yes,
you want to have that awesome attorney we were talking about before help you create that brand in a way and the language with it so you can capture that lead. Let's say it's a broader benefits, savings, seniors program, and then that opens you up to monetize in different ways, not necessarily by selling the data, but by directing that contact in the direction of offers that you can earn on if they re-opt in or if they consumer initiate an inbound phone call or outbound or whatever.
Absolutely. You just nailed it. You said it better than I did, right? Good job.
Fine here, man.
So, sometimes I find it easier to say what you can't do than to say what you can do.
Right.
Wow, geez, what do you know? From a lawyer, tell you what you can't do and won't tell you what you can do. But again, what you can't do is what people have done for a generation now, which is bring them in, sell them one thing and say, oh, hey, I sold them one thing, so now I'm going to go sell them a few more things.
Right.
You can't do that. But you can sell them a subscription program, benefits program, whatever you want to call it, right? Where the consumer understands on a recurring basis they're going to be receiving information, texting, calling, whatever it is, whatever your channel is. And if they agree to that, you got it, man. Fire away, right? But again, it has to be transparent. It has to be clear. From the start. No cheating. That's right.
What's up in the air? What do you think is for sure on the table?
Wow. So before December 18th, about a month ago, I would have told you everything's firm, it's moving forward. The FCC is definitely saying we're moving forward. The FAQs are out. The final notices are out. Everything that's necessary for this thing to take effect has been done from an FCC perspective. The Insurance Marketing Coalition, though, the IMC, has taken a challenge of this ruling to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeal. And I'm going to tell you, they drew 3 Trump judges, and the oral argument went very favorably for IMC. Not on any of the arguments they actually brought. All of those arguments were rejected. But the judges just kind of made up their own kind of doctrine around when a agency is implementing an exception. Because what's happening here is the agency is not just implementing the TCPA, it's actually implementing the definition of the exemption of express consent. And the question is, when an agency implements a right to consent, how much can that right be restricted? And that's a really interesting question, and one that was not briefed by IMC or the FCC. It's one that the judges just kind of dreamt up for themselves. And it does open the door to the possibility that the FCC has overstepped because they've taken away the consumer's right to consent too much. Now, we'll have to wait to see where this is going to land because it's very much in the eye of the beholder, right? But based on the framework that they've laid out, the judges did, at least an oral argument, you might see a path where, for instance, logically and topically related as a requirement goes away, but the one-to-one piece still stands. So we'll just have to wait and see, but it's really interesting. So right now I'm giving a prediction that you're still looking at about a 60% chance that the rule goes into effect in some form or fashion. But there is about a 40% chance now that it gets modified. So a lot of people are like, whoa, this is a big change. And it is a big change. I mean, this is not something I would have told you even a couple weeks ago. But coming on the heels of that oral argument, any responsible lawyer now has to look at this and go, there's a chance portions of this are going away. I don't think the whole thing is going to go away. It might, but I think portions of it are going to get modified. And unfortunately, we're not going to know until the ruling comes out. Until we know. That's exactly right.
Any other last words of advice for anyone that has skin in the game with the coming changes?
Look, what I'm going to say is this. There is a ton of money to be made today. There will be even more money to be made tomorrow, right? The market for well-designed lead flows, well-designed affiliate programs, individuals that can execute and drive consumers to either subscriptions or products, that's only going to become more valuable in the future, right? It's like the gold in the hills has not gotten depleted. It's gotten richer and bigger and stronger, and the nuggets are better, but they're also harder to mine, right? And you can't just go in there with your picks and your hand tools anymore like we've been. Now you got to go and start investing in some machinery. Not everyone's going to do it, right? Those that aren't going to do it, they're not going to find gold. they're done. Those that are smart and either have the resources or the determination to get themselves legal counsel to really take this stuff seriously, there's going to be more money made in this industry than ever before.
I love optimism.
But it's on the other side. That's just a fact. It's just a fact,
cool.
Right?
It's refreshing.
That's the truth, man. Because what has happened is the regulators, for the first time ever, have said, you don't have to live in the shadows anymore, lead generation industry. REACH, our organization, Responsible Enterprises Against Consumer Harassment, went to bat for the industry, talked to the FCC, and the FCC now says there is value to the lead generation community, right? The days of living in the shadow are gone. You can now come out into the bright light and you can make a hell of a lot of money. You just have to do it the right way. So to me, I look at this as a gut check for everyone, right? Are you here because you feel like you can make easy money? In which case, understand, guys, that faucet is turning off. It sucks. I don't want to say it, but that's the truth. That faucet is turning off, right? So now we have to change our mindsets. All right, the days of just anyone spinning up something in the basement, probably over. Now you've got to think about how you're going to make smart, wise investments to put yourself in the game long term. How do you assure market share? How do you assure intelligent, correct distribution? And how do you assure, most importantly, legal and compliance with this new regime, right? That's it.
Awesome. How can people learn more about you and how you can help them?
So I'm the czar, baby. TCPAworld.com, Eric Troutman, the czar, TCPA. I'm very, very, very easy to find. My law firm, of course, is Troutman Amin, and TroutmanAmin.com is another great way to find me. But we're at the conferences. We come around. We try to meet people. We try to connect wherever we can. So don't be a stranger. Reach out. Shoot me an email.
Thank you for your time, man.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure.